Exactly. Why don't we just go ahead and start? So welcome everyone to our 2022 Mentor Kickoff webinar. I'm Graham Thomas. Christy D'Alejandro is here with us as well. And what we're going to do today is it's almost like a little training refresher, provide you with some insights, some best practices, things that we've learned over the last 14 years about serving in this mentoring role. We are really excited that you are here with us today, and we're really excited that you decided to join us this year as a mentor. A couple of real quick housekeeping items before we kind of dive into the presentation. You'll probably notice that your cameras are turned off and that you are muted, and that's simply for sound quality. But it looks like several of you have already found the chat box. There's a Q&A box down there as well, so please feel free to ask questions. Tyler is on the back end of this right now. He will do a couple of things. He will, for some of your questions that are real short and easy to take care of, he will just reply to them. But he's also going to keep track of any kind of themes that we're seeing, and we will address those at the end. So he will join us at the end. He's keeping notes of all your questions, and anything that's kind of the overriding theme, we will address those. So if he doesn't get to it right away, or we don't get to it right away, know that we will get to your questions at some point. We often talk about the mentoring program kind of being the heart of our program. And I told our group that was with us yesterday, Christy and I were in Dallas just this past weekend talking about the work at tnAchieves, and the work that you do in the mentoring role is what we always get the most questions on. There are a lot of other communities and colleges that have made their schools tuition free now, but most of them don't do this piece. This is the piece that a lot of other programs find to be really challenging, and it is tough to find 9,000 people every year. So we're extremely grateful that you have come alongside to work with us this year, and look forward to working with you. So with that, Tyler, if you want to put up our presentation, Chrissy is going to kick us off talking a little bit about the role. And like I said, if you have questions or anything, please drop them in the chat box and we'll make sure to get to them. Chrissy, you want to take it?
Yeah, thanks so much, Graham. And thank you to everyone for carving time out of your no doubt busy day to just get a refresher, sort of a launch, if you will, before you receive your 2022 students next year. As Graham alluded to, we are forever grateful. Graham, 12 years into tnAchieves. This is my 14th year. I've been there from the very beginning. This work is special and different in Tennessee because of you. I believe anyone could do free college. I mean, scraping the pennies together might be difficult, but I do believe anyone can lift up a scholarship program. It's really difficult to build scaffolding around the idea of shifting a culture of college going and college completion in the state. And we only do this because of our 9,000 plus champions every year. Randy Boyd, our fearless leader and chairman since the beginning, once said in a group that in order to find the 9,000, that we knock on 90,000 doors, which is actually pretty accurate. So I appreciate you answering the call. So to jump in, a lot has changed over the years under our mentoring umbrella, from the execution of the mentoring program to the number of meetings we've had. But what has forever remained the same is the role, this pillar, if you will, of our organization, where what we realized back in 2008 when we launched tnAchieves is that funding is critical. I always say it's the carrot that brings students and families to our program. But truly, if you are the first one in your family to go to college, or even if you're not the first one in your family to go to college, having someone in your corner, a champion, as you transition from high school to post-secondary can be game-changing for many of our students. So really quickly, the roles. Number one, to be a task manager, making sure students are meeting critical deadlines. It's one thing for them to receive countless emails and text messages from someone at tnAchieves that they have yet to meet. It's something really different for the mentor to come behind or even before us and provide that nudge that many of our students need. They're all waiting until the last minute. They are masters at procrastination. And so that task manager position, have you completed your college application? Have you met with your advisor? Are you registered full-time for classes? Really critical to ensuring that that student seamlessly enrolls at their post-secondary institution. And I would argue, and we'll talk about this in a bit, that's true for students who are attending a Tennessee Promise institution, so a community college, a TCAT, a four-year institution offering an associate's degree program, Or if the student is off to the University of Tennessee, your role will be incredibly critical in that task manager space. The second is to be a resource. If no one in your family has gone to college before, the lingo around college can be incredibly intimidating. What's a bursar? What does MWF stand for on my schedule? These sorts of things, and we have countless stories that we don't have time to share with you today, but could, about how paralyzing those sorts of terms can be for our students. So a resource helping students navigate that post-secondary journey. They often jump in with both feet before reading the instructions. I watch my 12-year-old do that all the time. And so making sure that you are there to help navigate the instructional piece of post-secondary, if you will. And then finally, and I believe most importantly, to be an encourager. We can do this together is an incredibly strong statement for our students. Many of our students have never thought about going to college before, or if they've thought about it, maybe have been discouraged by family challenges, by their background, by their zip code, by their lack of resources, fill in the blank. And you are there to say, we can overcome these obstacles together. It's critically important that part of your encouraging role, and we'll talk about this in a bit, but becomes this normalizing of college. I always say to students, I was the first person in my family to go to college. In fact, no one on my mom's side of the family had graduated high school before I did. And so it's a really important time for students to think about the fact that they belong in post-secondary. That sense of belonging is huge. And whatever you can do, maybe you don't have my story, maybe you have Graham's story, both really supportive parents. Both of us had really supportive parents. Graham's parents went to college, mine didn't. But you can find something like we always talk about, I failed my first math test. Like that's normal. That's not a reason to walk away from post-secondary. So again, normalizing that encouragement piece, critical to the work we do. Also entering the mentoring program with the right mindset. Tyler, if you don't mind scrolling me down a bit to the mindset component. So I talk about this in terms of 3 Ps: positivity, persistence, and proactive, being proactive in your communication. So positive, you may work with students who are, for lack of a better word, Eeyores in the space. Like everything is really terrible and awful, and you are there to be that positive force in the space. You can do it, we can do it together. Remaining positive, incredibly important, especially when students hit roadblocks, and they will. I don't know a student who just seamlessly rolls through from applying all the way through financial aid processes and they land on campus smoothly. So positivity, incredibly important. Number 2, to be persistent. This is one of the most important things that you can do as a mentor, is remain persistent. Students will not be as responsive as you want them to be. I'm going to repeat that. Students will not be as responsive as you want them to be. May not be, they will not be, I promise you. And so it's your responsibility to continue to follow up with those students, to continue to communicate with those students. I always say, don't let the 17-year-old hurt your feelings, right? You're the adult in this relationship, so hanging with them. We have countless stories. In fact, Graham shared one yesterday with his mother-in-law where she never heard from the student. And then all of a sudden there was an educational emergency, right, that the student hit. And then the student began communicating with the mentor because she continued to hang in there and proactively communicate. So that last P, proactive. Don't wait on the student to come to you. Go to the student. Ask the student about non-academic things. So yes, you are there to help the student check those boxes, but you're also there to learn more about the student. My team of 31 can help those students check the boxes. You are there to meet the student where they are in this process. So getting to know the student, their dogs' names, what they're interested in, what their hobbies are, that will build trust in the relationship. So then when they do hit that roadblock, you will be there in their corner ready to go. If you follow along on the expectations, so what does tnAchieves expect from me? To proactively communicate. When you receive your student list on Monday, Tuesday, early of next week, that's the goal, then you will begin proactively communicating with the student. I would first send an email to the parents. Don't expect the parents to respond, but this is a courtesy. My name's Chrissy DeAlejandro. I'm really excited to work with your student as their Tennessee Achieves mentor this year. Here's my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. Once you make that communication with the parent, then you can quickly pivot to working with the student. And Graham's going to talk to you about all the ways that you can work with the students, but I would argue do them all. Text message them, call them, work via Tennessee Achieves Connect, sort of smother them, if you will, with that proactive communication. Continue to show up. If you do schedule an independent meeting with the student, for example, make sure you're showing up and that you're communicating effectively with those students. So again, you may be the first person that's taken an active interest in this student's college journey. And so showing up for these students, especially our first generation students, is huge. And then finally, as I've said before, sharing your journey, making sure that the student understands that you are not poof an overnight success. If you were, congratulations to you. I've never met one before, but share your struggles with students so that they, again, understand that this is a journey. It's not necessarily about the destination, although we want all our students earning that critical post-secondary credential and moving into family sustaining work. But at the end of the day, you are there to share your experience so that you can enrich that student's life and help them understand that they are, in fact, college material too. Some communication strategies. So we hear every year from our mentors, like, what do you see that's working with students? Because I'm having a really difficult time connecting with my students. Ask the students questions, ask them to respond to you, right? So not only are you asking them, do you have a pet? Do you have siblings? So you're going to this high school. Do you go to the basketball games, right? I could come up with a list of 100 questions that you could ask the students, but also asking the students to reply, not have you submitted your community service, but what are your plans to complete your community service? Are you job shadowing? Are you going in person? Are you doing this virtually? Asking the students very specifically, I need a response from you, yes or no, is also an incredibly important component of receiving a response. And then finally, personalizing the communication. I know lots of mentors who do the first communication to their students in a group form. And I think that works fine. But as you get to know your students, you need to make sure you are personalizing. And I would also argue that each time you especially text message the student, that you identify yourself, like, hey, it's Chrissy, your Tennessee Achieves mentor. Do not assume that they have saved your number in their phones and will answer your calls. So I would make sure to say, hey, it's Chrissy, your mentor. I'm really excited to talk to you. Do you have time at the end of the day today, right? I mean, you know the standard protocol here, but making sure you identify yourself is incredibly important. And then remembering the things that you're collecting on your students. I always say it's sort of like a concierge, if you will, right? Like taking notes on what each student likes, where the students are attending, and you can find a lot of this information under the Connect umbrella. Okay, Graham, I'm going to turn it back over to you to walk them through logistics.
Sounds great. Before I start talking about different ways to meet your students, I see a ton of questions in the chat about the handbooks. So I'm going to go ahead and address those real quick. The handbooks should be mailed next week. So before the meetings I'm about to talk about begin to take place, you should get your handbook. There is also a digital copy on our website. So I've seen a lot of questions about that. All right, so what I'm going to talk about now is the different ways for you to meet with your students. Before I dive in to each one of these meeting styles individually, want you to know that these are not mutually exclusive. There is a way that you can do one of these, two of these, or all three of these. They all complement each other, but we have different meeting styles. One, to make sure that you're comfortable in our current climate. We know that there is still a pandemic. We know that people may not be ready to get into in-person meetings. We know you may want to meet in small groups or in larger groups. And so we've tried to come up with something this year that will provide you with an option to meet with your students that you're comfortable with and that will be meaningful and impactful. Keller, scroll down a little bit. I'm going to start first with the virtual meetings because I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Tennessee Achieves Connect. So every one of you will have access to Tennessee Achieves Connect. If you've not yet set up that account, I hope that you will go and do so today. Chrissy mentioned it already, but this is essentially a place where you can go, you can find all of your student information. It also serves as a really great database on your students. We update information on your students as we receive it. So when your students apply to a college, you can find that there. When they enroll full-time, you can find that there. You get an update on their community service hours. It's all in there. So for those of you that have mentored with us for many years, it's something that you asked for years and years, and we just didn't have the capacity. And now it is all there in Connect. It updates overnight every night. So it's almost a live update for you. But you can also host virtual meetings here in a format that looks very similar to this. You go in, you determine a day and time that works well for your student, and you meet with them virtually in what looks like a Zoom. There's also a calendar feature in the virtual meetings where you can go in, pick 5 or 6 dates that work for you. It goes to your students, and then they pick the time that works. You will get a message back, hey, your student chose Wednesday at noon, and you will go in and you will meet with your student on Wednesday at noon. There's also a messaging feature in Connect. When you message your students via Connect, they will get an email notification. And if they opted in for text messages, they get a text message notification. Same thing works with you. When your students send you a message in Connect, you will get an email. And if you opted into the text messaging feature, you will get a text message that you received a message from your students in Connect. The emails that you get, you can just respond to the email and it will go back to your student in Connect. So really a great way for you to meet with your students. The second time of meeting, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, Tyler, if you're scroll up just a touch, is our open house style meetings. So these are brand new. It is a kind of like an iteration of, if you've mentored with us prior to COVID, of those big, large mandatory meetings that we used to do. We are hosting one of these in every single county across the state. If your county has a college campus, we are hosting it on a college campus. Not every one of our counties does have a college campus, so we will host those at the high schools. We have sent you an email asking you a couple of things. One, we're asking which one of these meetings do you prefer? If you chose the open house style, then you were directed to another form that has a list of all the dates and times. You will notice that some of these meetings are very long, like 3 hours. It's because they're not intended for you to be there the entire time. Let's say I'm coming to you from Nashville today. So let's say you're mentoring in Davidson County. We have a meeting from 3 to 6:30 at Nashville State. First thing that we're going to want you to do is let us know which day you plan to meet your students there. If you have not done that yet, please do so as soon as you can. Again, this is an optional meeting opportunity, not something that you have to do and not something your students have to do. You'll go in, you'll let us know which day, and then next week, when you get your students, you will start communicating with them that you plan to meet them there. If you remember, if you've been with us for many years, these meetings used to be mandatory, which meant the students had to be there to meet with you. That's no longer the case. So the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure your students know you plan to go, and make sure that your students are going to come and meet with you. The other thing that happens when you register for one of these meetings is it will trigger our system to then communicate with your students that you're going to be there. So you'll be asking them to meet with you, and we will also be reminding them that you plan to be there to come and meet with you. You're going to get a group of students. We're going to talk about in a few minutes what that looks like in terms of their attrition through the program, which students apply, which students use it. I think what you got to keep in mind about these open house meetings is that you're going to be assigned to 5 or 7 students, and they will probably not all be able to come. If you have 7 students and 2 or 3 of them can come and meet with you that afternoon or that evening, that's a huge win for you. You'll get to sit down, you will get to know them. There's going to be a sign-in process where you come, our staff will be there, you'll sign in, we'll give you a table number. Your students will have the same table number, and you will all be seated together. You can run these several different ways. You can ask all of your students to show up at the same time and meet with them in a group. You can space them out if you like, where every 15 or 20 minutes, a student is showing up and you get to spend some one-on-one time with them. We would encourage you to reach out and invite their parents as well. Sometimes the parents will come and have more questions than the students will have. Our staff will be there walking around to answer questions. You will get a sheet from us when you sign in with an activity on it to talk about goal setting. And then our staff and the colleges are going to do some rotating presentations. We're going to talk about Tennessee Promise requirements. The colleges will talk about their programs. Our goal is that the local colleges will come and have a computer, and we'll be able to look your students up where they are in the admissions process. So if you have a student that doesn't know if they've applied or if they've been accepted, we can go sit down with the college representative, pull up their account and find out exactly where they are, what they may need to do. And so really we're trying to make this a one-stop shop where you can get information, meet your students, and learn where they are in the admissions process. So first steps, if you have not already, will be to let us know that you plan to attend, communicate this with your students, and we will also communicate it with your students. We are really excited about these. We're excited to get back out into the communities and meet with you and your students. Second in-person style meeting that we have for you is this independent meeting, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's you reaching out to meet with students at a time and place that is convenient for you. We know that our mentors have been doing this over the last 14 years, but it's never something that we have really kind of pushed or encouraged you to do. Randy Boyd, who is our board chairman, every single year gets his list of students. He reaches out, he invites them to pizza one night. Again, he's paired with 7 or 8 students, maybe 3 or 4 of them show up, but he gets to start building that relationship with them very early on. A couple of things that we ask you to do if you're going to go with this independent meeting route. One, choose a place that is somewhere public in the community. Coffee shops, the local college campus, the library. If you want to do the pizza thing like Randy does, you can do the pizza thing like Randy does. It's kind of up to you and your students. We had a mentor this past year during COVID that actually had her student come over during the summer. They set a table up out under a shade tree in her front yard. So public enough, right? And she tutored her for the placement test. She essentially did a tnAchieves summer bridge program one-on-one with her student. So you will be able to meet with your students at a time and location that works for you. So how do these all work together? You all have Connect. So the virtual meeting is an opportunity for every single one of our mentors. If you don't want to go out and you're not ready to go into a large group setting, this is perfect for you. If you do want to go to the open house, you can still use Connect, and I would encourage you to still use Connect. Once you meet with your student, if you decide to do the open house or just virtually, you can set up these independent meetings. This is not a either or type of thing. This is, you can do all 3, you can do 2 of these, or you can just use Connect as kind of your jumping off point and go from there. So know that these all work together. We got a lot of questions yesterday about what if you chose one on the form and you change your mind. You can go back into the form. You can let us know. mentors@tnAchieves.org is the email address. Let us know that you want to switch. In our larger counties, there are more than one of these open house meetings. So you may have chosen a date and find out that the other day is better for your students. So if you need to change, just email us mentors@tnAchieves.org and we will make that change for you. You can also reply to any of the emails or text messages that you've received from us over the last several months. Those go to a real person, Tyler, Ben, or I will get back to you. And so you have lots of opportunities if you've changed your mind or want to do something different. But these are the 3 options that we currently have for you in 2022. Hope that a good portion of you will be able to join us in person at an open house. But I think the thing that's most important to remember about these open houses, especially if you've been a mentor with us for several years, is that they're not required for the students to be there. So you're going to want to make sure that you are proactively, like Chrissy was talking about, communicating with your students that you're going to be there and that you're going to have the opportunity to get to meet them. Again, our staff will be there to help make sure everything runs smoothly, as well as our college partners to give you as much information as you possibly can. So that, I'm going to kick it back over to Chrissy, talk a little bit about the expectations, and then I think we're going to take your questions.
There's a lot of chatter about like, can I do all 3? Or do you recommend that I do all 3? Yes, if that fits your comfort level. We know that some individuals are not super comfortable being in crowds yet. And so again, that Connect piece really does work. I love it. For someone that was jotting notes down about the students that I mentor every year and this notebook, and then I fill that notebook and then I'm moving to another notebook. When I went back to try to personalize my messages. It was all over the place. So having all the student info in one place is a dream come true for those of you who've been mentoring with us for a bit. So that alone, allowing you to communicate with the students in that portal, is also really amazing. But if you feel comfortable coming to the open houses, I think it's a great introduction. Although, as Graham said, we can't guarantee that your students will be there. We're going to work hard. We know you'll work hard to get them there, but it is not mandatory for the students to be there. And then those independent meetings, I think, are great. I've met with plenty of students independently on college campuses, at coffee shops. One student really wanted to meet at the Cracker Barrel, so we did that. So, you know, meeting students where they are and where you feel most comfortable is exactly where we want you to be. So it is a menu of options for you this year, but I would strongly encourage, as a baseline, utilizing Connect. So moving into the student expectations around assignments. So for the last 14 years, the swirl in the mentor stratosphere has been, well, I started off with 7 students and I only ended up with 3. So, I mean, I just didn't do a great job mentoring, or I don't think I was a very effective mentor. I started off with 6 and I only had 1 student. So let me say, that is by design. And it is one human, not one widget. And if you were Chrissy D'Alejandro's mentor, for example, where no one in my family had gone to college before, and I went to college and graduated from college and now have 3 small children who talk about going to college all the time, then you've not just affected Chrissy D'Alejandro, you've affected an entire family cycle. And so remembering the importance of hanging on to one human life is a really big deal. And Tennessee Achieves mentoring wasn't designed for you to have 7 students or 8 students and for you to walk this journey with all 8 students. So if you look at, and I'm not going to go through this entire diagram, we did that during training, but if you look here at this diagram, we provide you with more students than we know will actually follow through and enroll at a Tennessee Promise institution. Number one, all students need support, I would argue, at some point. And so being there for all students, I think, is huge. But also know that 60,000 students apply every year. 89% of the state's high school seniors apply for Tennessee Promise, whether they plan to attend the University of Tennessee, which is not Tennessee Promise eligible, Vanderbilt, the University of Alabama, you fill in the blank, non-eligible institution, and they apply. So from 60,000, about 18,000 students actually follow through with Tennessee Promise, with another 21,000 going somewhere else. So we don't know that coming into your mentor student assignments. And so we provide you with your top high school if we can, and then we pair you with students with the understanding that, again, 2 students, 3 students, huge win, 1 student, also huge win. So remember that as you're going into this journey, that we know that there is built-in attrition, and there was never it was never our intention to have you working with all 10 students seamlessly, all being communicative, and all enrolling at a Tennessee Promise institution. Ultimately, at Tennessee Achieves, we want students to go to the place where it is the best fit for them at the time. We want students earning a college credential. That is the end goal for us, and entering the workforce in a very viable way. So I just wanted to review that with our mentors, so that I'm trying to eliminate the swirl of, you know, what exactly is a good mentor, or what is a successful year with Tennessee Achieves. For me, it is that one student who never thought they could go, and you've answered their questions, even if it is via text, right? That then makes the decision to get off the couch and apply, or gets out of the car. Graham and I have this story from one of our very beginning years, where a student sat in her car, drove to Pellissippi State in Knox County for the entire first week of school, and could not get out of the car and go into the building because she was so intimidated by college. I was talking to a group of students just last week. I was judging a Boys and Girls Club competition, Youth of the Year. And I asked the students, what are you most intimidated by? And they said, making friends. So again, that encouragement piece, that yes, you can get out of the car, and yes, you will make friends. And there are so many welcoming people at Pellissippi State who are ready to support you. All of that is incredibly important during this critical time for our students. So I'm going to stop there, allow Tyler to pop on, and Graham and I will answer any questions that you have.
Yeah, I saw while Tyler's popping on some questions about where your students are going to be coming from. So we are actually starting up the pairing process today. And I think Chrissy mentioned, look for that email Monday of your list of your new students. What we're going to do is do our best to pair you. Well, we will pair you in the county that you chose, and then do our best to pair you at the high school that you chose as your first preference. Some places like in Knoxville, for example, Bearden High School is wildly popular, and West, which is just right down the road, usually needs a few. So if we do have to give you students from more than one high school, we will do it geographically where it makes sense, so that your meeting with your students would likely take place at the Hardin Valley campus of Pellissippi. We're not going to give you a student at Hardin Valley and a student at Gibbs, right? That are very, very far away from each other. In our smaller counties where there may only be one or two high schools, you may have a little bit of a mix. And it's simply because we've got enough mentors at one of the schools and not enough at another, but we're going to make that make as much sense for you as possible.
Yeah, we had a lot of great questions in the chat. And one of the first ones that I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on is, where can mentors find their expectations and kind of timelines for milestones and working with their students, what they should be doing when, and progress they should be making through the year?
All of that can be found in your mentor handbook that's coming your way. It's also on our website. And if you haven't activated your Connect account, that all of that sort of information is found in a place called Pathway. So there's continuing ed for mentors, all sorts of resources out there for our mentors. I've seen chatter about, Tyler, like, what about the eligible institutions? All of that on our website, right? 13 community colleges, our 26 TCATs, and those four-year institutions offering associate's degrees. But that is found also in your mentor handbook, which we've sent you an online copy, and another is coming your way.
Yeah, and you're going to get an email from us every single Monday with what is going on that week, what's going on in the next week or two. So we're never going to leave you in the dark in terms of what you should be talking to your students about. And then, like I mentioned earlier, any of those emails or text messages that you get, reply to those. Someone will answer you as soon as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would reiterate Chrissy's point as well. tnAchieves Connect has a resources tab, and we'll be updating that throughout the year. We'll be adding resources as they become relevant. We'll be taking them away as they're no longer necessary. So that's a great hub where you can find active information to be pushing your students to. Another question we got is, why is it important that mentors work with parents, and how often should should mentors be reaching out to their students' parents?
If you were emailing students, I would always copy their parents on the email. I mean, just as a heads up. So many of you may know this, but we work with about 60,000 high school seniors every year, plus about 30,000 college students every year. Plus, we work under the umbrella of 67 institutions, post-secondary institutions, and 601 high schools. All of those receive an email from us every Monday. So we always copy the parents on the student communication, as well as all the humans in their sphere, just so we can all be on the same page, and that's the student page. This is where your student needs to be. So my argument would be, if you are emailing students, to always copy their parents on it, making sure you do that introduction email. Don't always count on the parents to show up to the meetings, right? These students are sort of entering adulthood. Many of them may show up. If you were Chrissy D'Alejandro, you would be there. So I'm sorry for the mentor who will ever work with my students. But nonetheless, there are plenty of parents like me, but there are also plenty of parents who are working two jobs and are trying to make ends meet, and also really want what's best for their students. So you never know what you're going to get, but I would say, especially in that email space, as much as you can keep the parent in the loop, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. We're also getting a lot of questions about tracking milestones for your students and whether Connect allows you to actually keep track of notes and progress that your students are making. Connect is always going to be updating with your students' community service submissions, their college application status as we get that. That's going to be loaded onto their profile every single night. And you also have the ability to track progress towards goals and mark them off as they complete them. As soon as you're paired with them in tnAchieves Connect, you're going to see a list of goals that you can track. And you can also take notes on your students as well. This is a great spot to track your conversations and kind of pick up where you left off next time you talk to them. Chrissy and Graham, can you talk a little bit about the community service requirement, why it's a part of the program, what it looks like for students to complete community service, and why it's important?
So I could talk about this all day. As I said, I've been there from the beginning. I could tell you there would be no Tennessee Promise without the community service requirement. No one in Tennessee was supportive of free college. There is programming built around and scaffolding built around the work that we do under the Tennessee Promise umbrella. And so part of that is the volunteer mentor, which a component we love, as Graham said, the heart of what we do. The other component was cultivating a generation that believes in giving back to their community. So in the early days, just to give you a history lesson of tnAchieves and early days of Tennessee Achieves, we were raising dollars privately for the scholarship. There was no excess lottery dollars that we now have for the Tennessee Promise. And so when we would go to a donor, a big piece of this was saying, our students are cultivating a culture of giving back to their communities. This is also not students picking up trash. They are job shadowing, they're working in their church, they're doing all sorts of different things. And I will tell you, 96% of our students say that they enjoy their community service activity. We ask them every time they submit. It's always a really high percentage that enjoy it. If you ever pay attention to our virtual community service that we lifted up during COVID, it's all about exploration of careers, and our students really do love that. We've received really great feedback. So I think there's a negative connotation around like something else for students to do. It is one day's worth. They have, anywhere between 5 months and 8 months to get it done. And we have very few students who are dropped from the program because of community service. It's often because they're choosing an institution outside of the Tennessee Promise umbrella.
Another question we got is all around how will mentors know when their students become ineligible? What does that process look like?
Well, one of the things is in your Connect, they will, you're going to see where your list of students is. You'll click on the little mail icon, all your students will pop up on, will populate on the left side of the page, and they'll go, for lack of a better word, they'll kind of go dark. They kind of fade a little bit. You will also see their eligibility status on their profile, so you will know where they are in the process. And then, the first thing that you will see in terms of eligibility is going to be that community service deadline. So if you're tracking them and you see that on July 2nd, they have not submitted 8 hours, they're ineligible. I saw someone ask in the chat, are the students that you're going to get next week, have they already met the FAFSA and the mandatory webinar deadline? Yes. So we're not going to pair you with students that are no longer eligible. We're only sending you ones next week that are eligible. So when you get that list, you can feel assured that they are eligible in the system and ready to go.
Yeah, and we'll also be sending you lists after those critical mandatory deadlines. We'll send you an email list to let you know, here's where your students stand and here's who you should continue working with through the rest of the year. Another question we continue to get is, where do I find my open house dates? If you need your open house dates, we have sent to you via email and text an RSVP form that you can click on and find all of the dates for your community. But if you need that resent, just email mentors@tnAchieves.org and we'll be happy to send that your way so you can get RSVP'd and get ready for your open house. Making sure we got all our questions covered here. I think that about covers all of the big questions. But like I said, if you need any follow-up after this, if you feel like you're missing something, just email us at mentors@tnAchieves.org and we'll be happy to get that taken care of.
Yes, I cannot thank you enough for what you're doing. We got asked in Dallas, Graham opened up with, we were in Dallas and we got asked, what's your manpower under the Promise umbrella? Well, you're looking at it. It's Tyler full-time answering all your questions. Like, imagine taking care of 9,000 volunteers, all with different questions and in different spaces on their knowledge level. So thanks to Tyler, Graham and Ben, who also work in this space. So I'm super thankful. We are all super thankful for the time that you're carving out, and we will walk this journey with you. So this is not like, and good luck with your students. we will continue to walk this journey with you. So always respond to our emails or text messages. We are happy on the other end to be there and to be a resource for you as you're working with our students. So thank you. Thank you. Guys, any parting words?
Thanks so much. We're glad that you're here today, and we're looking forward to working with you this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for volunteering. We're excited about it.
Appreciate you guys.